everybody, it's Dana and welcome back to another tutorial for the holiday card series. Let's go ahead and get into today's card. I am using products from Avery Elle, two stamp sets. First is the Polar Peekaboo Pals, which is so cute, but I also wanted to pair it with the original Peekaboo Pals. I wanted to show you how you can pull those non-traditional stamp sets into your holiday cards. I'm also using this gorgeous paper pad. This is called the Holiday Collection, and it is filled with beautiful holiday paper. But some of those papers I know I can use when I'm not making holiday cards as well. So for my card today, I'm going to do some simple Copic coloring. I'm bringing in my MISTI, and I'm going to use Copic Express It paper. This is my favorite paper when it comes down to Copic coloring. I just always get really good results with this paper. I'm just going to bring in a couple of my magnets to hold everything into place, and then I'm going to grab some of the images. Now, these images are coming from the Peekaboo Pal, not the Polar Peekaboo Pal. I just want to make that clear because these are the ones that were meant to celebrate birthdays, or if you had a thank you or a party or I miss you. These images come from that set, but I'm going to pull them over into my holiday inspiration. I am going to grab out some of the images from the Polar Peekaboo Pals, but at the end, I'm only going to end up using the little hats. Now, since I have all my images in place and I made sure to leave enough room around each element so I am able to die cut it out a little bit later. I'm using Memento Tuxedo black ink because this is an ink that works perfectly with Copic markers. And I can swing my MISTI lid down and go ahead and press that in. Now, what I love about this ink, my pad is really juicy at the moment. So I only had to stamp once and I got some really great crisp lines. All right, now I want to grab that little hat, and I'm going to also grab an acrylic block because as you can see, I can only stamp one doing it on the MISTI, but I'm just going to grab that block because I need to stamp out 3 more of them since I have 4 little critters that are going to go onto my holiday card. So using just an acrylic block, I can stamp them, but I'm also leaving enough room that I know I'll be able to die cut everything out. Now, since I have all of my hats stamped, I can go ahead and run this through my die cut machine. Now, I wanted to go ahead and show you the colors I used for the images because I've sped up the coloring, but I wanted to share the colors with you. I kept all of the coloring really simple. Anytime I'm doing little images for cards, I don't go overly crazy with a lot of detail. To me, if I do basic Copic coloring on this, I have the opportunity to make a lot more of these in a smaller amount of time compared to putting in a lot of detail. Now, I am giving this card to my little niece, Araya. Hello, Araya, because I know you watch TT Dana's videos. Hello, Pumpkin. This card is going to be going to her because I love to give out shaker cards to little ones, and I think Araya is going to love this. So for the elephant and the hippo, I used the same color combination, and I wanted to keep the color combination really soft. I didn't want a lot of competing colors. So for the little monkey and also for the little bear, I kept them in similar brown tones. I didn't want to go too far out into a whole bunch of different colors on these animals because I don't want it to compete with the shaker element of this card. So again, I'm just doing some really simple coloring here. I'll come back in and I'll do a little bit more shading on the bear. And that is just to make sure that anytime you color, you want to like kind of round out your images. So that's what I'm doing here. I make sure to give their little faces a little bit of roundness by keeping most of the color, the darker color, on the outside of their face. Now, since I have all of my little animals colored up, I'm going to give them a little bit of blush on each side, and then I can go into my hats and my scarves. Really basic color combination here. It's R22, R24, and R29. That's pretty much my go-to when I'm doing simple Copic coloring. And I'm going to do the same exact colors on the scarf. Again, keeping the coloring very simple. Now, I do want to make sure that I add a little bit of color to the white area. So for that, I'm just going to use my C00 just to add a little bit of shading. Now we can go ahead and start building up our shaker. I went ahead and cut out a little frame and I put some foam behind it. I will link to where I got this foam from because it's my absolute favorite. So I went ahead and cut that out, and I did keep the centerpiece of this because I want that to be my background panel for this card. Now I need to set that aside because I need to work on the sentiment. So I have a piece of light blue cardstock here that I want to darken up the color a little bit. And the way to do that, I'm going to grab some Distress Oxide inks. So I'm starting off with tumbled glass, and this is a good way if you are ever wanting to blend a color that you already know what the color is, like let's say red or blue, and you just want to deepen up that cardstock. Pull out some of your inks because that lighter color of the cardstock is still going to show through on that ink, but you already have like the base color already done for you. So this is a really easy tip to just darken up some of the cardstock you might already have in your stash. Now, since I have that down, I'm just going to make sure that I have a good square on this. I'm just kind of eyeballing it because I just need to trim this down. I want this to match the paper. Now, it doesn't match quite yet, so I'm going to grab some peacock feathers here. And I'm not going to use a lot of this, just a little bit to just deepen up that blue. I don't want to use a lot because I don't want this to turn into like a greeny blue. So I'm very lightly just going over everything with that. Peacock's feathers here is the prettiest color that I have in my collection. All right, now since I have that done, I can go ahead and move the Distress Oxide inks out the way, and I am going to dab on a little bit of water. So I'm just squirting some water into my hand, and I'm just going to flick it onto the card panel. Now, I don't want to use too much water here because I don't want my card panel to warp, but I do want to get some of those lighter and darker specks on my paper. Now that was a little bit too light for me, so I'm going to hit it one more time with just a little bit of water. Again, just flicking it on from my fingertips. And now I can kind of see that creaminess come about, and I'll grab my heat tool to go ahead and heat this back. So I'll just dab off any extra of that water. And then I'm going to go ahead and just lightly heat it. I don't want to heat this too much because I don't want it to warp, but I do want to get some of that moisture out of that paper. Now, this is my heat tool that has a lower heat consistency to it. So that's going to help me not to bow that paper. But now I want to add in some white snowy elements. So I'm using a white gouache here. I'm just going to put some of it on the edge of my acrylic block, and then I'll come in with a paintbrush and some water and dilute that down. I just want to get that to a creamy consistency where I can go ahead and flick some of that onto the card panel itself. So now I'll just use that brush and just flick some of that on. I want it to mirror some of the snow that is around the border onto this piece as well. Now, if I don't get the snowdrops big enough, I can go in with my paintbrush and literally paint in some of them. This is a good tip if you're not getting the consistency that you want, just draw them in by hand. And I'll just dab some on as well, just with the tip of my paintbrush. And then I can flick in those lighter snowy flakes. Now, once I get this all done, I do want to make sure that I heat set this portion of it because that that gouache rather is going to stay very wet, and I want to make sure this is dry before I go to stamp my sentiment. Now I could set this aside to dry and come back to it a little bit later, but I'm very impatient, so I just grab my heat tool for these kind of things and just make sure everything is dried. All right, now since I have everything dried back, and you can tell when it's no longer shiny, I'm going to grab one of the sentiments from the Polar Peekaboo Pals, and this is the Happy Holidays, and I'm going to stamp this on here. Now, this panel is going to be used for our little critters to kind of tuck them behind. So I'll grab out my MISTI and place my paper in there. Now I do want to make sure I get this straight. So I am going to put down my magnet here rather, just to make sure I keep the corner of that paper totally against the edge, because I really only want to stamp this once and I do not want to mess this up. So I'll make sure to adjust to make sure it's straight. And then I can go ahead and grab my MISTI lid and pick up that sentiment. Again, just bumping that right back into the corner. For my ink, I'm going to use some VersaFine black ink. This is my favorite when I'm stamping out any kind of a sentiment. And I'll lightly walk my fingers across that happy holidays and then lift that up. And look how pretty the sentiment looks. It's perfect and it's straight. Haha, so I do not have to restamp this. All right, now let's start building everything up. So I have a piece of white cardstock that's going to be my backer piece for the shaker element. I don't like to take this and put it directly on a card sometimes because I'm always so afraid I'm going to shift. So I'm lining that backer piece right in the center of where I want it. And I will gently lift off the frame, and then I have a pencil and I'm going to make little marks in each corner. So when I glue this piece down, I know I'm putting it right back in the same exact area. And this is just going to help me. So when I put back on that frame, I know this is in the right spot. I'll grab my liquid glue and I'll make sure to put a good coating of this glue onto the back of this. I want to make sure that my paper stays nice and flat. Now, once I have my glue on, I can go ahead and flip this over and again, line them right up to where I had them before. Now, using the liquid adhesive obviously gives me the opportunity to shift that paper to exactly where I need it. And nobody's ever going to see those pencil lines at all because the frame is going to cover that up. Now, since I have that on there, I can place my frame and now I know I can trim around that piece and I'll be good to go. Now for the fun part. Let's bring in the sequins. I decided to use a couple of different sequences here. I wanted to use some pretty blues that does have a little bit of undertone of teal, as well as some red. Again, I'm pulling that red exactly from the little hats and the scarves that we colored up already. I am also going to bring in a bunch of silver white ones that are really small. And then I thought I would also bring in some gold. Anytime I'm making a holiday card, I either like to add gold or silver to the cards. Now, I like to mix my sequence up. I do this as well with my Halloween candy. When I put it in a bucket, I have to mix it. So not like all the Snickers are sitting on top or, or the Reese's are on the bottom. I always have to mix it. So I like to also do this when I'm doing my shaker cards, just to make sure I have enough around and everything's mixed in and nothing's just sitting on top. I'm going to add some glue to a few spots here and I'm just going to glue down some of my shaker elements. So this way when the card shakes, I do have some sequence that's just going to sit in place. So if all the sequence falls to one side or to the bottom, there'll also be some ones that are just hanging out as, little colorful snowflakes. I'm just going to grab a few of the red ones. Those are the largest ones that I want to be sticking to the back of this panel. And I'm not going to go crazy with this. I'm just going to add a few of them. Again, that is when I shake the shaker cards and some of the bits fall to the bottom, some of the sequence falls to the bottom. I just like to have a few of them that are already stuck to the background. Now, since I have those in place, I figured I wanted to add some larger sequins. So I'm just going to press those down to make sure that they're going to adhere to that cardstock. I'll press them down and then I need to fill this card up, I think, a little bit more. So I'm just going to push the sequence around just a little bit, see where I'm at, and then I want to add some larger sequins. These are really, really large, silvery, kind of pearlescent ones. And I think they work well with the larger snowflakes in this card. So again, I'll use my fingers, mix up my sequence. It's almost like, making a pie or something. I just can't have everything like settled into one place. I have to move it around and make sure all the elements are mixed up pretty. Now, since I have that down, I do want to add just a few more because I want to make sure when Araya shakes this card, there is a lot of sequence moving around. That's the worst part, is to make a shaker card and then seal it up, and then you realize, I should have used more sequence. So just go sequence overload in the beginning, and then you never have to worry about that. So I added some more of the larger iridescent ones, some more of the blue, some more of the red, and some more of the gold. I'll slide in those other ones, mix them up again with my fingers. Now I do want to kind of push them back towards the center, so when I put my frame on, I know they're not going to get stuck underneath the frame. I also want to use an anti-static rag to make sure that all of the sequins don't, because of the static, want to stick directly to that acetate. Now, to adhere this down, I'm just going to use the same liquid adhesive I've been using during this whole tutorial, and this is the Hero Arts Liquid Glow. This is my fave. I'll put that along the side, and then I can go ahead and line up this panel right over the sequence. And you see that a lot of the sequence doesn't just jump to adhere to the static of the acetate. They kind of sit there nicely. Excuse my big old head, but I needed to get like over the card to make sure it was lined up. Now I'm going to press the sides really, really well, just to make sure that when I go to shake this, nothing's going to start flying out. So I'm pressing pretty firmly here, just to make sure that adheres properly to that paper. And then I can go ahead and trim off the excess. But look how beautiful that is. And look how, oh my God, I'm already in love. I'm already in love with this. I think I need to make one just for myself. Now, since I have that done and I know everything is shaking and there's plenty of sequence in there, I'm just going to grab my Fiskars scissors here and just trim off the rest of the outside of this. This just assures me that everything's going to stay, and then I can go ahead and put this onto a card base. Now, once I have everything trimmed down, we can go ahead and put this onto a A2 card base. But before I do that, I do want to bring in my sentiment as well as my little critters. So I die cut these out, and now I'm just figuring out the arrangement of where I want them to sit on my card. So as you can see, I'm just tucking each one of the animals underneath that blue centerpiece that we stamped the sentiment on. I'm just trying to figure out my arrangement here. And I think I want to have the two browns across from each other and the two grays across from each other. So we're just going to shift that little bear, and we're going to shift that hippo and slide it back into place. And look how pretty that is. You see all the shaker elements around it, and then you have those little critters on the front. Again, I'm just going to grab my liquid adhesive, and I'm just going to put glue around the side where the little animals are going to sit. I'm not putting it all the way around. I can just pick up my animals now and glue them securely to the back of this piece. Now, if you wanted to, you could have elephants all the way around it. You can have the little bear all the way around it. But I liked having several different animals on this. And then Araya can pick out her favorite. I'll slide that one on. And I'm just holding them in place just to make sure that it is sticking to the adhesive before I move on to my next step. And look how cute that card looks. Oh my God. I'm like giddy right now. You have no clue. I'm just lining that up to make sure it looks good. And then I need to put on their little hats. Now the hats are going to lay outside of the card frame, and I'm okay with that because I'm going to put this in a slightly larger envelope. So it doesn't matter if they're hanging off just a tad bit. And look how cute all of those images work together using that polar bear, peekaboo pals, and then the regular peekaboo pals. Remember, you can mix and match your stamp sets. That's what's so awesome about crafting. You don't have to just stick with one stamp set. Make sure you mix it up. Give yourself a variety. instead of just saying I can only use this stamp set for this time of year. Because in the Polar Peekaboo Pals, there's a bear, there is a fox that I can also use on birthday cards. Or if you wanted to make winter themed cards, you can go ahead and pull in those scarves that I colored up earlier and put those on a card as well. Now, since I have my little hats in place, I'm just going to put that last one on that hippo. Tap that down. And now we are actually ready to start finishing up this card. I do want to add a few red sequins onto this panel here. I felt like I needed to bring in a little bit more of the red onto this panel. So I used some of that wet adhesive, that Hero Arts glue, and I just put it in the corners. I didn't want to go crazy with the sequins on the top, but I did want to pull in some of that red onto this top piece. All right, I'm going to slide this aside so it can dry, and we'll start making our card base. Now for this card base, I have a top folding card. So you see there, I just made a top folding card. And then I can place this on, and I have that really nice clean white border around. Again, I'm using liquid adhesive here. Usually I would use my tape runner for this, or my ATG gun. But instead, I'm just going to use the liquid adhesive because I know this is really going to stick. So as you can see, I put on enough to make sure it's not going anywhere on this card. And I'll place that down. And look how full that shaker is with all of those gorgeous colors. I really think I need to make one of these for myself now. I think it just needs to stay in my craft room. So once I have that on there, I can bring back in my little critters and place those down. Now, like I said, the ends are going to hang off. And again, I'm okay with that because I'm going to have a larger envelope. Now, since I know that everything looks perfect, I'm going to grab myself some more glue. And I'm not going to use a lot on this, but I do want to use it all over the little animals. And I do want to put some down on that blue backer piece. Just a little bit will do. And then that gives me the opportunity to slide these into place. Remember, anytime you're using wet adhesive, it affords you the opportunity to kind of slide things exactly where you want it. Now just gently press that down. And look how cute this card is. It is so stinking cute. If you guys follow me, when I start giggling, that means I am like so happy. Now I do want to add a tad bit of shimmer to the hats. So I am using a Wink of Stella here, and it's a clear one. And I'm going to start off with just one coat on the hats and the little pom-poms on top. And then I'm going to go right back around and do it one more time because I really want these to have a great shimmer and shine to match all the iridescent colors and all the sparkle that we have in the shaker card. So I'll go through and put one more layer. And then guess what, you guys? This card is done. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Oh my God, I would love to see you guys make a shaker card with this stamp set because I really want to get some more ideas on how to use this. All right, everybody, that is a wrap for me today. Make sure to head over to the blog to get some additional pictures, and I will see you guys in another video soon. Tomorrow's another big day of inspiration. Make sure to watch. Bye-bye.